welcome to Overdrive. With me as always, Tim and Wilf. And guys, we're going to have a bit of a chat about what we saw in pre-season F1 testing, about which teams' drivers look like they've got the best package when racing does eventually resume, which we're expecting will happen at some point later this year. I think pre-season testing was quite interesting. It showed up a few interesting elements, not just the Mercedes DAS steering system, but there was quite a bit that was going on there. So, guys, what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I think we have to say that Mercedes are looking unfeasibly strong in every department, to be honest with you. They've evidently been working on the engine, although it's gone bang a couple of times. Let's face it, they're going to be working on that even as we speak. Making equipment for the NHS or not, they are not going to stop because they don't have to in the engine department. So they're going to make every leap going forwards. Also, Red Bull had to admit that actually the Mercedes rear suspension system was a little bit special. And when Adrian Newey points out something's a little bit special, generally it means it's pretty groundbreaking. So I think that Merc is actually possibly almost as dominant as actually the first hybrid era car would have been.
Yeah, it's going to be certainly interesting to see what they come up with. Wilf, what are your thoughts? Do you think Mercedes are still going to be dominant, or are Ferrari up there?
I can still see Mercedes being the main dominant team. I mean, from what's coming out from obviously reports and media speculations and what we've seen in parts of testing, that there's nothing that obviously can be touched by any other teams on their level at the moment. You'll get you'll get Ferrari at some point will make steps forward, but I don't think they're going to make groundbreaking leaps forward that will really put them way past Mercedes at the moment.
But as Tim mentioned, we saw in testing that Mercedes have had a few reliability issues. And yes, we know what teams can do in the dynometer testing cells, but that doesn't always work out on track. There is a possibility there then that Mercedes could be a little bit unreliable if the engine goes bang a few times. Are Ferrari going to be there to pick up the pieces, or is it going to be Red Bull, or are there going to be other teams out there that are going to be in a position? We saw a vast improvement from McLaren last year. Could they be a surprise?
To be honest, I think Mercedes is going to iron out those engine bugs because, frankly, they know where the flaws are now, and they're going to be working on that as we speak. And no team has used an engine at all. So there is no regulation that actually says the engines that were in there in Australia actually have to be the ones that are used first off. I can guarantee that Renault are testing the engines right now, Mercedes are testing them right now, Ferrari are going to be testing them right now, and frankly so Honda. And all that is going to mean that actually a completely different evolution of engine is going to be there. Now, all of them are going to have a bit more power, but I think Merc are going to be focusing on the reliability because they're going to want to iron that out. Now, that combined with the chassis that they've come up with, I think we're in for something special when racing actually comes up. The only people I think are going to be close are going to be Red Bull because, frankly, if you give Adrian Newey time to develop anything, he could probably polish a turd.
But, it's if they can iron out the reliability, yes, Mercedes could be strong, but it is going to be questionable about whether they can iron out that reliability issue. There's quite a bit there that's that needs to be looked at.
Oh yeah, certainly there's a lot that needs to be looked at, but then again, we're not talking human error factors here. You've got a huge team of boffins over there at Brexley, and they're going to come up with something. They always have done. They've got a track history of doing it. It's one of those assurities, really, that if there's a problem, Mercedes get to the bottom of it. They always have done, and identified it with every car and got over it generally. So I've got full faith in them. It's there are other assurances in Formula One. It's a bit like if you put Vettel under pressure, he's going to spin, or go in the back of someone. It's not a, it's just one of those things. Mercedes are going to, come up with a good car. We all know it.
And
I mean, they've still got.
We've got to look at some of the other teams. And McLaren have been improving. Can they fight for victories this year?
I don't see them fighting for victories. I see them fighting for maybe a podium, a third here and there. I can see them getting up to there, but that's on a case of with reliability issues with the other drivers. Do you know what I mean? That's when they make silly errors, they run off, maybe they spin, damage the axle. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Maybe they have a poor pit stop, gives them that bit of issue. They can maintain it, especially at places like Monaco, stuff like that, where you can get ahead and keep that position. But when it comes to an all-out race, Silverstone, you're coming to Imola, places like that, I don't see them being sound as maybe Ferrari and Mercedes. I mean, although Mercedes can't use the DAS for 2021, I mean, they've still got to use normal PAS.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's it's unfortunate that they've come up with an innovation that's going to be outlawed for 21, but let's be honest, they found a loophole and they've exploited it. Do you think this time now has given some of the other teams a chance to develop their own versions of that system? And might we, when racing does resume, might we actually see more teams having that kind of active steering wheel concept?
I think there is the possibility, but also that means you've got to redesign most of the rest of the chassis of the car. So I'd be surprised if we did, but not totally. Now, the other thing, though, is those teams are then going to fall into the trap of underdeveloping the rest of the car in that period, at which point Mercedes will have been strolling forwards with innovations. You can guarantee they've got people working at the minute running countless different scenarios out the way, just so they can, we have been developing it, but coincidentally we had this development program that's already in the pipeline to make it go that much more quickly.
It does seem that that maybe McLaren, that maybe Mercedes have an advantage there. Let's think about some of the other teams that might have a bit of a leap from Racing Point. Basically, they've done a carbon copy of last year's Mercedes. Looks interesting, but again, are they going to be in a good position when racing resumes or when racing starts later this year?
Yes and no on that one. One lap performance is definitely going to be there, but one thing we know about the Mercedes is that as a design from last year, it didn't work so well still following other cars. It's always been designed to be the car out in front. Now, the new Mercedes is going to be that much quicker, and really, so's the new Red Bull work. So that's at least 4 cars that are guaranteed to be ahead of it. I think the Ferrari will be slightly quicker again around a lap. So that's 6 cars that it's got to follow, getting hot and not really performing in its best way. So whilst they've got 1 lap performance, yes, I don't think they're going to have the racing car they really think they're going to have.
But I mean, we talk about a lot about aerodynamics. I mean, just because a car looks similar to another one doesn't mean it's got all of the same aerodynamic principles and profiles, particularly on the in some of the more finer areas. I mean, Wilf, we've seen it before with other teams where they've come out with a car that looks similar to something else, and the performance just hasn't been there.
I mean, you can give the same, like with Toro Rosso, all right. Imagine you put the same livery from the Red Bull on a Toro Rosso, and partially it will be identical, but it will not run like a Red Bull. Do you know what I mean? There's underlying bits and pieces in a Red Bull that are going to differ to the Toro Rosso. So, but on the flip side, some of those parts on the Toro Rosso may work better than the Red Bull. So it can counterbalance each other, but I don't think you're going to get the imitation car working as well as what it's meant to look like.
Yeah, interesting. One thing I do want to talk about, Alfa Romeo. We saw last year an improvement from the previous year's Sauber to the new Alfa Romeo, just with a little bit of investment. More investment has gone into the team. Could they be a surprise?
Realistically, last year a lot of their performance was gained off the back of that Ferrari engine, which, let's face it, there's still questions about. It's, whilst there's no proof it was illegal, there was also no proof it was actually legal. So realistically, we actually have to take a step back and go, the proof's going to be in the pudding. As you know, that engine was supremely quick in a straight line, and actually they were out dragging people, and that was simply it. Now, I think we're going to have to say they'll do well to stick with last year's position.
Okay, interesting thought. I mean, I'm kind of thinking they're going to do better. I think they've done a lot more investment over the winter this year, so it'll be interesting to see. Wilf,
I think it's going to be a lot more interesting in regards to the amount of time that manufacturers and teams have had over this period, calling off this season, with getting bits and pieces that would have been set for this season, advancing to next season. They've got a lot more scope and a lot more time to focus on those and get those parts right. So we could have a season where a lot of teams have found that parts are working much better because they've had that bit more time to work on them, whereas during the course of a season, you don't get that time.
No, it's certainly going to be an interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where all of this pans out when racing starts. Just very, very quickly, we've kind of half mentioned Toro Rosso, now AlphaTauri. We've not talked about Haas, and we've not talked about Williams. Where are any of those together? And we've not talked about Renault. The Works Renault team. That's another sort of interesting package with Daniel Ricciardo having had a year there in the team. How will he have been able to build that team around him?
I think Renault are going to be dark horses in this. I don't think they're going to be right at the front, but they're certainly going to be doing a lot better. One thing Enstone was always known for was the chassis, to be honest. The Renault engine has never been the strongest at any one point, but it's worked well in chassis. And that's where I think Enstone's going to come in. I think they're going to surprise people with their package. Now, we all know that Ricciardo is a brilliant driver, and frankly, I also loved his parkour video that he released a couple of days ago. I don't know if anyone else has seen that video. Feel free to watch it. I'm sure we can throw a link in for that one for anyone watching. But yeah, the guy's still himself. He's still that joker. But he's still staying fit. He's still staying very, very sharp. He's got a very astute mind on him, and that's actually where I think Renault have lacked before. No offence to some of their other drives they've had before, but realistically, the only one I would rate that they've had recently has been Carlos Sainz.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Ricciardo, I like Carlos Sainz, and I mean, I do believe that they are going to be in contention in the midfield, and they are going to be one of those teams that will pounce on any issues with the top 6 drivers, getting themselves into points positions consistently, I reckon. So I mean, they're a team to sort of keep an eye on. I'm not sure Haas will ever come and dominate up into the top half of the grid. I think every now and again you'll get them with their with the qualifying. They have good qualifying every now and again. They get up, but race pace always falls away, and drivers always make those silly mistakes. And that's what makes the team
do we
down.
think this is a make or break year for Haas? Could this be the season where at the end of it they turn around and go, enough's enough?
I think it could be a point where they do turn around and say that if it doesn't start performing at the other spectrum of the grid, then they can just pull funding. Do you know what I mean? And just bail out. There are other teams, so many other manufacturers and stuff that want to come into it. So it's not like they would be lost, and you would lose a team without being replaced, because they can be replaced.
Yeah.
Who would you like to see come in then if Gene Haas did pull the funding? Because that's a bit of a question. What other manufacturers really are hovering around there? Would VW be a good fit?
I don't think you're going to get manufacturers coming in, not with the current engine regulations. What you might then start to see is possibly one or two other independents. There is still some people out there. What was the Hispania F1 team that was set up by Campos? They're still looking around to try and do something, and they've got already got a good relationship with Dallara, who built the Haas car anyway. So there's some possibility there. And you've got to look at some of the teams that are currently in sports cars as privateer teams that could look at doing that move across and buying a chassis from someone like Dallara in the way that Haas have done. So there are options out there.
Yeah, but then again, you've got all the inputs and all the backers of the people that are in Formula E. You've got there's different formulas that are running that are easily backable with large funding that can put themselves on the grid.
Okay, last two then. AlphaTauri, Williams.
AlphaTauri, I can't tell you too much about, to be honest. It's their testing was just. Yeah, it was sterile. There was nothing really to write home about. They weren't bad. They weren't amazing. They were just there. They were obviously sandbagging like everyone else, but you just couldn't tell. There was just no clues. Whereas Williams had a definite improvement. I mean, when actually in testing, they were beating their qualifying lap from the previous year. When obviously they're going to be going, foot to the floor, then they've got a better car. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Last year's was an utter dog. And this year, they've definitely got something better. How much better, though, we wait to see.
Williams have definitely got to step up and start making performance strides, because there's only so long that you can hang on to the Williams brand and the name before people, as good as that is, you're not going anywhere. You're stagnant. You're not progressing in a sport that is always pushing boundaries going forward. If you're always at the back, people are just not going to. They're just going to pull, and it's a shame, because in the long run, if they don't, we will lose Williams.
And let's not forget that the last driver to win a Grand Prix for Williams was Pastor Maldonado.
Yep. Yeah,
that's when he stayed. That's when he stayed on the track.
Okay,
I'm sure
we're
that
not
was just an
expecting any
accident.
great.
He stayed on. He was probably trying to crash.
He wanted to get down to the pub quicker. Just stayed on for one race.
So we're not expecting any great changes in how the teams are going to perform this year. You know, it's going to be much the same as last season. Mercedes out front is the expectation from what we've seen. Maybe a little bit of shake-up in the midfield and towards the end, seeing how the likes of Renault, AlphaTauri, Williams, Haas all play themselves out. So yeah, I think it's going to be a great season when things do start get going.
I think the main pressure, I think, is all on Mercedes. Because Mercedes are expected to win the championship. They're like put up there as the top dog. So they are expected to win. So I think there's more pressure on them now to keep the performance, whereas all the rest of the teams are now valued underdogs that have to beat Mercedes.
Yeah, very much. It's much more difficult to stay at the top than get there. But realistically, they've built the team to do it. So let's see what happens. But I'm 90% sure that Mercedes are going to stroll it in whatever format, even if we get a shortened season this time around with these cars. I genuinely think Mercedes is just going to use it to, frankly, turn the engines up to 11 and tear around with a bit like the old Honda way of doing it. Okay, the engine's a bit flaky, so let's rag it.
Well, let's see what happens, guys. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching. Hope you can join us again very soon.